Story 1. People who think that watching a video about a subject makes them experts. Story 2. Greed drives those in authority to seek more power, money, and status at the expense of the environment, animals, and other people. This has happened throughout history, is happening now, and will continue to happen. Until we evolve as a species and realize that greed destroys everything, it will end in tragedy. Story 3. Greed, power, corruption, misinformation, anti-intellectual populism, scarce resources, rage, and tribalism are presented as a single amorphous movement of danger. Story 4. The most powerful people in the world have no interest in world peace. Story 5. People keep getting devalued. It feels like only some lives are considered worth anything anymore. Story 6. Constant surveillance by governments and greedy corporations. Story 7. Nations meddle in each other's affairs over resources and internal feuds instead of minding their own business. Story 8. Venture capital firms are a poison to economies, spreading from country to country, destroying businesses and jobs and acting as parasites. Everywhere they operate, unemployment rises and markets slow down. Story 9. I feel like that assumes there is currently world peace. Story 10. Hands down, the corrupt Donnie administration. You dumbfuck minions can downvote all you like because you are loyal to your dear leader, but he is unhinged, open to manipulation for money, emotional, not logical. He is a danger to the United States of America and the world. Story 11. People who tell easily fact-checkable lies and who eagerly consume them because it means their team is winning. Story 12. Pacifism. Orwell said it best. Pacifism is objectively pro-fascist. This is elementary common sense. If you hamper the war effort of one side, you automatically help that of the other. Nor is there any real way of remaining outside such a war as the present one. In practice, he that is not with me is against me. The idea that you can somehow remain aloof from and superior to the struggle, while living on food which British sailors have to risk their lives to bring you, is a bourgeois illusion bred of money and security. Mr. Savage remarks that, according to this type of reasoning, a German or Japanese pacifist would be objectively pro-British. But of course he would be. That is why pacifist activities are not permitted in those countries. In both countries the penalty can be beheading. While both the Germans and the Japanese do all they can to encourage the spread of pacifism in British and American territories. The Germans even run a spurious freedom station which broadcasts pacifist propaganda indistinguishable from that of the Peace Pledge Union. They would stimulate pacifism in Russia as well if they could, but in that case they have tougher people to deal with. Insofar as it has any effect, pacifist propaganda can only be effective against those countries where some freedom of speech is still permitted. In other words, it is helpful to totalitarianism. Story 13. Religion, specifically people who use religion to hide that they are behaving badly. Story 14. This may be an odd one, but China's decades-long plan, already in effect for at least a decade, is to gain control of large parts of the African continent. China has been funding and building much-needed infrastructure and other projects across the continent that few others will touch, because investors risk losing entire investments due to corruption and other factors. China has enough capital to absorb multi-billion-dollar losses repeatedly. China makes agreements with these countries knowing they cannot afford the work. When countries inevitably default, China can claim valuable assets such as cobalt mines. As a result, China may acquire vast natural resources, many of which are among the world's major sources. This could give China significant control over the global supply of numerous crucial elements and materials used in manufacturing. Major news outlets have largely avoided serious coverage of this for a long time. It could be one of the biggest threats to the global economy, manufacturing, and supply chains, especially for electronics such as phones and cars. Story 15. One misjudged incident, such as a Taiwan Strait collision, an errant missile in Ukraine, or an Israeli strike on Iranian nuclear sites, could cascade into a global conflict. For now, tensions are holding, but the margin for error is not very large. Story 16. People are blind to the systems that bind them. We are constantly given bread and circuses, scandals, and pretty things to look at, We dissociate collectively because reality is terrifying and cruel. We are so bound up that we do not consider other possibilities. We are taught to fight to remain chained to the company and do not realize there is enough wealth to fix almost everything at once if those in charge were not so invested in hoarding power. Story 17. Debt and the need to exploit people so you can sell junk cheaply to pay it off. Story 18. Artificial intelligence already accounts for about 50% of online traffic. It invents its own sources when it is wrong, takes jobs, and makes people rely on it for the simplest things. There are useful applications of artificial intelligence as a tool, but so far it is mostly causing harm, stealing people's faces and voices, artwork, and breaking copyright laws. Because it is not a legal person, there are no laws against it. Story 19. Greedy old men desperately clinging to power so they do not go to prison or be lynched. Story 20. There is a general lack of humanity and care for one another, and so much greed and selfishness. In America, many people are too focused on chasing hollow dreams while sabotaging others on the way to success. Story 21. A world leader who desperately wants a Nobel Peace Prize but does not want to do the work of creating peace. Story 22. We would not have nearly as many wars if military leaders led from the front. Also, the hyper-rich, not multimillionaires, but those with over $100 million. Story 23. The oligarchy has been waging a war against the environment since the 1950s solely for profit. It has succeeded in overthrowing the United States government, which affects the entire world. It has extracted wealth from the middle class in most countries. It has funded technology that amplifies the worst aspects of human behavior online, at a time when we should be benefiting from global communication. A very small number of individuals control the direction of humanity by concentrating the majority of wealth, land, resources, and technology. They are investing in artificial intelligence for the sole purpose of removing other people's ability to survive in current economies. Honestly, nothing else comes close to the damage to our species. It is the great filter. Story 24. The United Nations was created to avoid making drastic decisions and now hampers efforts to reach significant agreements. Story 25. The toxic cocktail of Trump and Putin. That said, world peace is many things. I think artificial intelligence will wreck certain socioeconomic structures, and this will in turn lead to unrest, new classes of poverty, and a slow atrophy of creative processes and important human interactions. Story 26. Unchecked mass migration leads to low-trust societies, increasing civil unrest, and economic collapse. Story 27. Money. Laughing out loud. If there were no wars, people would start wars simply because they generate large profits and stimulate the economy. Story 28. That bird at the park down the street swoops down to peck your head because you walk too close to its nest. Bruh, build your nest in a different tree. Quit being conceited. Not everyone wants your tiny bird eggs. Story 29. Putin, the State of Israel, and the United States. North Korea is a little strange, but it is keeping to itself right now. Story 30. Being able to disagree with someone and still respect them. Story 31. Social media. I'm not kidding. It's as if we, as a species, decided to be as stupid as possible and let a flood of even more stupidity into our heads at a rate never before conceived. Story 32. China. They are trading partners with many countries but do not deal in good faith and have aggressive territorial ambitions. They resent not being the world's leading superpower and want to change that. Russia wants the same, but it does not have the economic strength for it. Story 33. Religion in general, but Islam is the most problematic of the major ones. Story 34. People who say, Trump, crack me up. It's radical religion and always has been. Story 35. I am more concerned about paying my bills and getting my next meal. Story 36. The war led by Vladimir Putin in Ukraine is spreading across borders and causing a larger conflict. Story 37. Trump, Vance, and the whole lot of them. Get them out. Story 38. Under Trump, the United States has significant influence, and behaving poorly is a major burden on the world. Story 39. Pardon my French. That fucking idiot is in the White House. I am an American. Story 40. You will notice in the comments all the unhinged people screaming about Trump. Manufactured outrage is created and maintained by very powerful people. This happens on both sides and has become an extremely effective way to control people. Story 41. Israel seems to bomb another country every month or so. Story 42. Wait, when did we achieve world peace? Did the war in Ukraine, the Syrian civil war, the wars in Yemen and Sudan, and all the other active wars and conflicts end? Story 43. Humans just fucking get on with it and nuke the planet. Story 44. I am not an expert, but maybe this is a list of all the ongoing armed conflicts. Story 45. There cannot be a threat to something that is not possible. Story 46. A total lack of empathy and understanding leads to discrimination, hatred, dehumanization, deportation, murder, and eventually genocide. Leaders often view empathy and understanding as weaknesses. Story 47. Donald Trump, Vladimir Putin, Xi Jinping, Benjamin Netanyahu, Ayatollah Khamenei, Kim Jong-un. Story 48. Artificial intelligence could be the best thing for humanity. However, history shows that every tool becomes a weapon, and artificial intelligence will almost certainly become the most powerful weapon we have ever known. Story 49. Vladimir Putin is invading Ukraine, and if he wins, he will come for the world. Story 50. Wealth inequality, food scarcity. Climate change is driving a range of problems that are quietly growing. Story 51. In a truly serious pandemic, many people will still be fatigued from coronavirus disease 2019 and will abandon precautions. Story 52. The failure to develop a comprehensive understanding of human behavior. Story 53. Bots spread misinformation. They create division, break up countries, and sow distrust toward reputable institutions. Story 54. Russia, China, United States, Iran, North Korea, Israel, India, Pakistan, and any other country with imperialistic tendencies and an appetite for war. Story 55. Religious zeal or the inability to live and let live. I have attended Alcoholics Anonymous and seen religious beliefs used rightly. They save lives. I went to Catholic school and saw religious beliefs used to extract money from parents who only wanted a good education for their children. I have a best friend who leans on his faith for strength and does not weaponize it against people. I came out as bisexual and regretfully laughed along as co-workers, community members, and relatives, who all attend church and hide behind their faith, indirectly hurled slurs at me because of my sexuality. It is the greatest irony that the world will never truly know goodness and peace because followers of some religions believe they are inherently the most righteous and peaceful. If your religion tells you to go out dressed in clown suits and bark at the moon, that is fine. If your religion tells you to coerce and demand that I join you in going out dressed in clown suits and barking at the moon, that is wrong. Story 56. How can there be a threat to world peace when world peace is not even a real thing? Story 57. The lack of compassion for humanity in the conflict between Russia and Ukraine. Story 58. People who try to get you to talk when you literally have nothing to say. Story 59. Celebrity. I do not mean celebrities in the plural sense, but the entire ecosystem and societal role of celebrity. We place too much importance on so-called great people who accomplish things, good and bad, and we try to deify those we like. To be honest, no single person will bring the world into a brighter future, nor will a single person catalyze a major cultural shift. Yet we keep thinking there will be one, using heavily skewed past examples as proof, and we fight over who that will be instead of working together to create a brighter future. A world that experiences true peace will be a world where we no longer care about well-known names or overly congratulate or reward people for succeeding. Story 60. Russia. They may have 1 million murderers or soldiers in Ukraine, but their primary battlefield has been in our minds for more than a decade. Story 61. Big Milk. You do not need milk, but Big Milk needs you. Do not let them win over your mind. Story 62. People do not understand all the factors that affect their way of life. Story 63. I once read that when the United States dropped the bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, it taught the world that the arms race was on. The United States has never set foot in any country that has intercontinental ballistic missile capability. Story 64. A certain country so easily manipulates another country's leadership and is constantly pushing for war. A portable document format file intended to prevent the truth from coming out may in fact be among files created by that country, most likely judging by current actions. They seem willing to plunge the world into chaos to achieve their aims. Story 65. Climate denial from executives in boardrooms who treat the planet like a disposable vape. Meanwhile, we are sweating through severe heat waves while they fly to summits on private jets. I grew up camping in forests that are now tinderboxes. It makes me want to throw their spreadsheets into the ocean. This threat is larger than nuclear weapons because it is slowly burning us all. What daily warning sign do you see that tells you we are in trouble? Story 66. People who believe whatever their political party tells them are too stupid and lazy to look anything up in context and have no reading comprehension, so they assume everything. They read or hear one thing, but it gets twisted in their minds. There is no peace with people like this. They walk around offended. Even before you can finish a thought, they think they already know what you're about to say and start fighting a mirage of their own making. Story 67. Propaganda and misinformation spread through social media and news agencies compromised by money. Story 68. People who pay too much attention to the mainstream media and base all their decisions on what they saw, heard, or read in the news. Story 69. It's surprising how all of these individual responses describe him. Story 70. The dictator is currently destroying part of his country's seat of government to satisfy his ego by replacing it with a room that is nothing more than a monument to himself. Story 71. I think artificial intelligence will have a disruptive impact, not through the models themselves but through markets that are pumped up because of artificial intelligence and the resulting uncertainty about what it will do to those markets. This strongly reminds me of the dot-com bubble. Story 72. An increase in polarization to the extent that it becomes irreversible. Story 73. The poorly designed, chaotic legacy of former colonial national borders in Africa and Asia. Story 74. The phrase threat to world peace implies that world peace exists. Under capitalism, it never has and never will. Trying to determine which individuals are most responsible is moot. Story 75. World leaders are attempting to use artificial intelligence to spread disinformation. Story 76. Religion plays a big role. Politicians and immigration laws can also cause many diverse cultures to be mixed rapidly on a large scale. Story 77. You cannot threaten world peace if it is already gone. Story 78. Politicians do not care about anything except themselves. The United Nations decided not to classify the Rwandan civil war as a genocide until after the conflict and failed to give its peacekeepers orders, which suggests its shared responsibility. Story 79. Russia and its minions, which include Donald Trump and Make America Great Again supporters, are in our government. Story 80. Trump probably. He wants war. He wants his own Reichstag fire. There is no escaping it. Story 81. Russia, the Republican Party, climate change, and deliberate widespread disinformation. Story 82. Donald Trump is honestly a bigger threat than Vladimir Putin and Kim Jong-un combined. Story 83. Trump. Peace in Gaza will not hold. The war in Ukraine will not end this year. Story 84. Donald Trump and the growing alliance of global fascist states. Story 85. Arguably the Republican Party, but that is a United States-centric viewpoint. In that case, perhaps authoritarianism more broadly. There is no place for that behavior in the world in 2025. Story 86. Fuck. I hate this. We are the United States of America and Trump. I truly hate answering this, but it's so true. Story 87. Fascism. Disinformation spread by the far right to get people to vote away their freedom. Story 88. The Trump cult and the resulting decline in educational attainment. Story 89. The spread of dictatorships armed with nuclear weapons is concerning. Democratic societies are in decline. Story 90. Billionaires. They are gutting our economies, which creates austerity and leads to fascism. Fascism arises when the rich bribe politicians who, in badly malfunctioning economies, pander to xenophobic authoritarian instincts in exchange for tax cuts. Billionaires also own platforms optimized for disinformation, fear, and loathing because that content sells advertising and keeps us fighting among ourselves. They fund climate denial and make the effects of climate change much worse. Story 91. Donald Trump, Vladimir Putin, and Xi Jinping are the three biggest threats to world peace. Story 92. Religion and nationalism are the biggest threats to world peace, in my opinion. Story 93. Same as for the last 20 years, Putin. In second place, his lapdog, Trump. Story 94. Interference by Russia in the United States. Story 95. The Trump fascist nationalist theocratic party of the United States would be a good place to check for threats. Story 96. Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, Agent Orange, and a very poor attempt at misinformation and propaganda. Story 97. The influence and leverage of foreign interests over Western democracy and the related corruption of many politicians through criminal networks is far worse than I had imagined. I thought they were just greedy people, not perpetrators of serious crimes. When you learn the scale of the abuse, the poor conditions in many wealthy countries, and the extreme wealth inequality begin to make sense. If we fix this problem, the world could move much closer to the fair and just society we imagine. Story 98. Poor people keep ending up on the front lines and joining the armed forces. We should start working to reduce poverty so there is no one left to fight. Story 99. The current religious delusion in Israel and the United States about their prophesied role in the end of the world. Story 100. Trump, Netanyahu, Putin, and those who are killing people in Sudan. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.